On April 24, 2009, that was when WHO said, okay, there will be a pandemic, and that's when the thing started. And then you have one opportunity to do it right. I mean, day one is so important. In day one, you start your communication with the press, with the people, and you have to do it right. I mean, you have to go for one voice, one message. In Belgium, they chose to appoint a non-politician to do that. I mean, I have no party affiliations, and that makes things a little bit, at that time at least, a little bit easier, because you're not attacked politically, majority, minority. That doesn't come into play, and that was a huge advantage. The second advantage is that you can play in Brussels the complete naive guy and get a lot more done than you would otherwise be able to do. You have to be omnipresent that first day or the first days, so that you attract the media attention. You make an agreement with them that you will tell them all, and if they call, you will pick up the phone. When you do that, then you can profit from these early days to get complete carpet coverage of the field, and they're not going to search for alternative voices there. And if you do that, that makes things a lot easier. These first weeks, that's easy street. When you have no opposition and everybody needs news and they can come to you for news, you can bring quite a lot of neutral information, and it is picked up, and it is well, the news is brought the way you bring it, and that is you can only do that in the first couple of weeks or months. One of the problems that we have, or that we had, is that we did not have a media budget. That was really €0 that we could spend. That means that you have to use every opportunity you can get to, well, it's not Britannia rules the waves, but rule the airwaves to bring out your message. And that's something that you can do for free on radio, on TV. If you have good pre-existing relationships with the media, you can try something else. We tried the following thing. We asked all of the anchors of the different TV stations, are you willing for free to participate in a sort of infomercial that you would pay for, all of you? And they said, yes, we'll do that. And that was hugely influential. And well, we would never be able, nobody would ever be able to pay for something like this. But if you have pretty good pre-existing relationships with them, then you can ask for a return favor, and they will, or they might do that. We had a call center which was gradually becoming more and more populated, and every almost hour to hour, and later day to day, you have to get an idea what are the questions that the people are asking. And every day, these questions were delivered multiple times so that I could work them into the interviews no matter what the question was. The first questions, that was the first peak, and that peak was about 900 calls per day at the moment, per week at the first peak. The first questions were travel related. Can I still go to Mexico? I have planned a vacation, can I get my money back? If you solve that problem by declaring an emergency, you help quite a lot of people, and that first peak goes away. That was the second wave of questions. People were asking more questions about what do I do when I get sick and so on, and that gives you the opportunity to work with that. And then you have to say, okay, well, we will have H1N1 deaths. Of course, that would be unavoidable. I used there Sir Donaldson's quote, where he said that in the UK, by the peak of the epidemic, 40 people would die per day at the end of the summer. So 62 at that time million people in the UK, 40 deaths a day. I worked it out for Belgium. That would be 7 deaths a day at the peak of the epidemic. I used that in the media. 7 Belgian flu deaths per day at the peak of the epidemic would be realistic. That is true in every year, even interpandemically. That was the third peak of questions that were, well, the first that it had an impact, and you have to deal with that. I went to the first couple of funerals. You have to be very quiet, sit in the back, but it shows that you care, and I think that was at that time quite important. So, all in all, at that time, the overall feeling in the population, in the press, was the Belgian approach is reasonable. In fact, we wanted to be calm, cool, and collected, and our mantra was, and that was from day one, at this moment, it is comparable, more or less, to seasonal influenza. in terms of outcome, but we have to prepare for severe scenarios. Like in 1918, the first wave was rather mild, and you could not predict that the second wave would carry a high mortality. We focus on low-cost basic hygiene measures. We did not do any school closures. And then the vacation came. And that is, communication-wise, a very dangerous period. It's a dangerous period because the more untrained journalists are at the helm. Yeah? And you get the weirdest questions. They're understaffed, so more articles from other countries will come in and contaminate your message. And that was a weird period. And then comes the time, inevitably, that they're going to talk about you. The flu commissioner is really a great guy. And then you get the feel-good articles about, what does he like, what music does he like, pictures from my first laboratory when I was 13 years old. And it's all feel-good, but when they do that, they also sharpen the axes at the same time. And then your personal life, your personal life becomes a little bit compromised, and so then they come to your home, and you have to really limit that, because if you do not limit that, then you have no life. At a certain point in time, I had a controversy about the payment of the physicians for the mass vaccination that would happen in a couple of months or a couple of weeks later. And the quote that I gave them in terms of how much money they would receive, that was far too low, and I had to be fired. You can solve that quite easily. I said, okay, you want me to be fired. I would like to win the lottery. The odds of both of these things are happening are fairly slim, and that passed. And then you come to the phase where they're going to be much more critical. And the first one was, the government does not do enough. The H1N1 vaccine will arrive too late, and there will not be enough vaccine. So at that point, I had to say, okay, I will be the last one to be vaccinated. I mean, you can all go in before me. I'll be the last one, and that later on I regretted that message. So you had to show them that you had, I mean, if the stockpiles, you had to walk there and walk in the rooms where you could show them that we have the vaccines, and they are already in the country. A lot of reassurance was necessary there. And then I misused the fact that the top football soccer clubs in Belgium inappropriately and against all agreements vaccinated they made their soccer players priority people. So I said I can use that, because if the population really believes that this vaccine is so desirable that even the soccer players would be dishonest to get their vaccine, I said, okay, I can play with that. So I made a big fuss about this. This is Van Ranst is raving mad, but it worked. And actually, these vaccination campaigns by the GPs went really, really well. In a number of weeks, everybody could be vaccinated. That's still a fairly relevant portion of the pandemic. Well, it worked fine in Flanders. So you know, Belgium, it's a complicated country, and this is the vaccination coverage. And you could see Flanders did really well. I did as many interviews in French than in Dutch. However, in the Flemish part of the country, we listen to the Flemish media. In the French-speaking part of the country, they equally often listen to or watch the French television, where all kind of other messages were coming across, and that was really polluting the vaccination campaign in. And then after the crisis, everybody becomes smart. Yeah? And you have to accept that from the get-go. And then the overall statement was, no, well, the government did too much, of course, because the number of deaths were disappointing to some people. This is Wolfgang Wodark, and I want to shame him, actually, because he, in the Council of Europe, had a motion for a recommendation, fake pandemics, a threat for health. They basically said that all these virologists, vaccinologists, they all have money in their pockets. They're dishonest people. That's easy to say. This is when you Google for H1N1. Of course, there was a peak in October and November. You didn't hear Wodark at that time. When you Google Wodark, you see that it starts nicely after the end of the pandemic. People become very brave at the end of the pandemic. I think that's not good. everybody has graduated from the University of Google, and respect for knowledge is gone, because why would you need knowledge when you can create knowledge by typing a couple of keywords in Google and getting it yourself? That is extremely dangerous.